Hello and welcome. I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to the program. Now on tonight's headlines.
President Joe Biden vowed the U.S. would lead the world's charge to confront the existential threat of the climate crisis.
There is a climate.
The World Health Organization's European branch on Thursday said it is too early to ease virus restrictions in Europe, despite a drop in new cases in most countries.
Amid multiple reports about cancellation or proposals to postpone the Olympic Games, IOC Chief Thomas Bach has reiterated its commitment to the successful and safe delivery of the Tokyo Games this summer.
And Singapore this week launched a 3-month trial of autonomous buses that passengers have to pay to use in a step toward its ambition to create a network of driverless public transport.
The Biden agenda. President Joe Biden vowed that the U.S. would lead the world's charge to confront the existential threat of the climate crisis. The measures included placing a hold on new oil and gas drilling on federal lands and offshore, as the leader of the world's second biggest carbon emitter began making good on his campaign pledges. Take a look.
And just like we need a unified national response to COVID-19, we desperately need a unified national response to the climate crisis, because there is a climate crisis. We must lead global response. Like previous administrations, I don't think the federal government should give handouts to big oil to the tune of $40 billion in fossil fuel subsidies. And I'm going to be going to the Congress asking them to eliminate those subsidies. We're going to take money and invest it in clean energy jobs in America. That's why I'm signing today an executive order to supercharge our administration's ambitious plan to confront the existential threat of climate change. It is an existential threat. With today's executive order, combined with the Buy American executive order I signed on Monday, we're going to harness the purchasing power of the federal government to buy clean, zero-emission vehicles that are made and sourced by union workers right here in America. With everything I just mentioned, this will mean 1 million new jobs in the American automobile industry. 1 million. Let me be clear, and I know this always comes up. We're not going to ban fracking. We'll protect jobs and grow jobs, including through stronger standards like controls from methane leaks and union workers willing to install the changes.
Now he signed a raft of new orders and announced a global summit in April. President Biden has appointed former Secretary of State John Kerry as his international climate envoy and said the U.S. will host a Leaders' Climate Summit on April 22, the 5th anniversary of the signing ceremony of the Paris Agreement. The U.S. is expected to announce drastically increased emission goals at that meeting, with the domestic policy push required to get there, led by environmental expert Gina McCarthy.
President Biden has appointed former Secretary of State John Kerry as his international climate envoy and said the U.S. will host a Leaders' Climate Summit on April 22nd, the 5th anniversary of the signing ceremony of the Paris Agreement. The U.S. is expected to announce drastically increased emission goals at the meeting, with a domestic policy push required to get there, led by environmental expert Gina McCarthy. Kerry earlier said the U.S. would be willing to work with China on climate negotiations, despite the two countries' disagreements on other issues, ranging from intellectual property theft to South China Sea tensions. Let's listen in.
Now, with respect to China, obviously we have serious differences with China on some very, very important issues. And I am as mindful of that as anybody, having served as Secretary of State and in the Senate. The issues of theft of intellectual property and access to market, South China Sea. I mean, run the list. We all know them. Those issues will never be traded for anything that has to do with climate. That's not going to happen. But climate is a critical standalone issue that we have to deal on in the sense that China is 30% of the emissions of the world. We're about 15% of the emissions of the world. You add the EU to that, and you got three entities that are more than 55% or so. So it's urgent that we find a way to compartmentalize, to move forward.
The World Health Organization experts emerged from quarantine in China Thursday to begin a long-awaited investigation into the origins of the devastating coronavirus pandemic, which has shown no signs of slowing down. Beijing has so far frustrated international efforts to track the origins of the virus, which has killed more than 2.1 million people globally, and only recently allowed the WHO team into China after repeated delays. The experts left their Wuhan quarantine hotel in a bus, wearing masks and peering at the media crowded outside. But it wasn't confirmed when they will get to start their investigation in the ground zero city or what they will be allowed to see. China has sought to deflect blame for the massive global human and economic toll by suggesting without proof that the virus emerged somewhere else. It has also been enraged by calls led by the United States and Australia for an independent probe. Beijing shot back on Thursday, warning against political interference in the WHO mission.
Meanwhile, relatives of those who died in Wuhan have accused Chinese authorities of deleting their social media group and putting pressure on them to keep quiet, apparently to avoid any embarrassment during the WHO probe. Let's listen in.
因为我是这样想，如果世卫坛的这些专家敢听我们这些家属的经历，是不是想调查真相，我是可以回武汉见他们的，知道吗？但是如果他们不敢见这些受害者家属，那我就始终认为这个世卫专家谈嘛，那就是在武汉的调查，那就是一个作秀、走过场，那就是糊弄全球的人，因为我们这个家属群一直在他们的监控之中，是不是？他为什么拆散了、强拆了？就是说明他们特别紧张，他们害怕这些家属，和这些世卫组织的专家取得联系，知道吗？
Relatives accused the Wuhan and Hubei provincial governments of allowing COVID-19 to explode out of control by trying to conceal the outbreak when it first emerged in the city in December 2019, then failing to alert the public and bungling the response. According to official Chinese figures, it killed nearly 3,900 in Wuhan, accounting for the vast majority of the 4,636 dead China has reported. Many next of kin distrust those numbers, saying the scarcity of testing in the outbreak's chaotic early days meant many are likely to have died without being confirmed as having the disease.
And the United States said it will defend the Philippines against any armed attacks in the Pacific, including in the contested South China Sea. That is according to State Secretary Antony Blinken on Thursday, as he underscored the importance of the Mutual Defense Treaty and the two nations alliance. The pledge was made during a call with Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. a day after Blinken's confirmation as America's top diplomat under the Biden administration. Blinken also rejected China's maritime claims in the South China Sea. Quote, to the extent they exceed the maritime zones that China is permitted to claim under international law. Blinken's pledge to defend Manila against aggression in the region also comes amid a new China law that empowers the Chinese Coast Guard to fire on foreign vessels or individuals it deemed infringing upon its sovereignty. On Wednesday, Secretary Locsin issued a diplomatic protest against the said legislation, citing the areas it may include in the South China Sea, where both China and the Philippines have contesting territorial claims.
Now, 1 week into the job, U.S. President Joe Biden has sent a clear warning to Beijing against any expansionist or intentions in East and Southeast Asia. In multiple calls and statements, he and his top security officials have underscored support for allies like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines, signaling Washington's rejection of China's disputed territorial claims in those areas. On Wednesday, Biden told Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga that his administration is committed to defending Japan, including the Senkaku Islands, which are claimed both by Japan and China, which calls them the Diaoyu Islands. The stance, or that stance, was echoed by Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who told Japanese counterpart Nobuo Kishi on Saturday that the contested islands were covered by the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty. Meanwhile, 3 days into the Biden administration, State Department spokesman Ned Price warned China about menacing Taiwan after it repeatedly sent more than a dozen military fighters and bombers through the island's air defense zone. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken told his Philippine counterpart on Wednesday that a mutual defense treaty obliging the U.S. to defend the Philippines against attack in the Pacific also applied to the disputed South China Sea, something the Obama administration did not specify. Those comments and others sought to emphasize that the new Biden administration will not deviate from the firm security stance toward China that it inherited from ex-President Donald Trump.
To other news now, with cases surging across Europe, the EU has demanded that AstraZeneca make up for delays by supplying doses from its factories in the UK. AstraZeneca has said there's simply not enough to go around. Take a look.
Now, let me be crystal clear. The 27 European Union member states are united that AstraZeneca needs to deliver on its commitments in our agreements. We are in a pandemic. We lose people every day. The view that the company is not obliged to deliver because we signed a best effort agreement is neither correct nor is it acceptable. Not being able to ensure manufacturing capacity is against the letter and the spirit of our agreement. We reject the logic of first come, first served. That may work at the neighborhood butchers, but not in contracts, and not in our advance purchase agreements. There's no priority clause in the advance purchase agreement.
Earlier on Wednesday, she had noted that AstraZeneca had 4 operating vaccine plants in Europe, 2 in Britain and 2 in the EU, and the contract made no distinction between them in terms of the contractual volumes to be supplied. EU officials briefing journalists on condition of anonymity stressed the bloc had allocated 336 million euros or $406 million US dollars to AstraZeneca to permit it to expand production.
Meanwhile, in London, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he expected AstraZeneca to honor its commitment to deliver 2 million doses a week to the UK from its plant in North Wales. Watch this.
Point at your question about the EU and our friends and partners there. All I can say is that we're very confident in our supplies, we're very confident in our contracts, and we're going ahead on that basis.
Should AstraZeneca start diverting vaccine supply from the 2 UK plants, that could jeopardize Johnson's commitment to have 15 million Britons vaccinated by mid-February. Already, thanks mainly to the AstraZeneca jab, Britain is one of the leading countries for the speed of its vaccination rollout, doing so at 5 times the rate of EU members collectively. A sudden slowdown in those doses would be dramatic, especially as Britain has suffered the highest death toll from COVID-19 of any European country, and Johnson is counting on the vaccinations to stem deaths. Tension between the EU and Britain remain high in the wake of Brexit, with British traders and consumers suffering as they cope with higher costs and bureaucracy outside the European single market.
Meanwhile, New Zealand has confirmed 2 more new cases of the more virulent South African COVID-19 strain in the community as investigators scramble to determine how the virus breached border controls. They said the facility, the Pullman Hotel in Auckland, was allowing no quarantine arrivals or departures as teams examine how the infection spread. Take a look.
To these 3 cases. So we've got one case who never made it out into the community. They ended up going straight to the jet park from the Pullman Hotel. But we know that that is the source case for the 3 other community cases that we have been dealing with. I want to say of those 3 other cases, 2 of them are from the same family. Investigation continues as to where they may have come into contact with each other, whether it might be a lift exercise area.
Health officials said the pair, an adult and child, caught the virus in the same quarantine facility as the woman who tested positive over the weekend, ending a run of more than 2 months with no cases in the community. New Zealand demands all overseas arrivals undergo 2 weeks quarantine and then test negative before entering the community. The new cases passed all the requirements but tested positive after leaving the managed isolation facility. Coronavirus alert levels in New Zealand have not been raised as a result, with few restrictions, meaning domestic life in the country of 5 million remains near normal. However, the cases have prompted long queues at testing stations in Auckland, where a second wave virus outbreak forced a 2-week lockdown last August. The South African coronavirus variant is more contagious than previous strains, although the World Health Organization has said there's no clear evidence it leads to more severe disease or a higher death rate.
In other news, India has further eased coronavirus restrictions, bucking the trend in many other countries as the huge Asian nation's infection and death numbers fall sharply. Government figures on Thursday showed that in the previous 24 hours, 123 people died from the virus in India, with 11,666 new infections. By comparison, the United States has posted daily death counts of more than 4,000 in recent weeks, while Britain and Brazil have seen daily totals of well over 1,000. In September, at the peak of the outbreak in India, the country of 1.3 billion people was recording almost 100,000 new cases and more than 1,000 deaths per day. India imposed one of the world's toughest lockdowns last March, but with the economy one of the worst hit worldwide, India has gradually relaxed rules, allowing most economic activity and even its famously lavish weddings to resume, albeit with numbers capped.
The city government of Manila conducted the second simulation of the coronavirus disease mass vaccination that targeted 1,000 community-based individuals. The activity was held at the Rosario Almario Elementary School in Tondo, Manila today. Manila Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Domagoso said the objective of the exercise is to be able to see the flow of the vaccination process. It also sought to observe other challenges to be able to improve the handling of the rollout. He said he chose to conduct the simulation in Tondo as this is the area that was first placed under a hard lockdown.
Meanwhile, amid multiple reports about cancellation or proposals to postpone the Olympic Games, IOC Chief Thomas Bach has reiterated its commitment to the successful and safe delivery of the Tokyo Games this summer. We have Dennis Liu for that report. Dennis.
Olympic Chief Thomas Bach on Wednesday said organizers were committed to holding a successful and safe Tokyo Games this year, dismissing cancellation talk as a speculation, but admitted for the first time that fans may not be allowed. After rising debate over the viability of the 2020 Games, already postponed for a year to July 23rd. Bach called for patience and said the International Olympic Committee was fully focused on the challenge of staging the event. Let's listen in.
Nobody at this moment can predict the health situation in 206 national Olympic committees for the time of the Olympic and Paralympic Games from late July until September this year. Not even the most prominent scientists in this area. So there is a speculation about cancellation, about a plan B, about everything. You know, some even make the proposal to postpone the Olympic Games in Tokyo to the year 2032. I want to say good luck if you would have to discuss this with an athlete who is preparing for the Olympic Games 2021. We are not losing our time and energy on speculations, but we are fully concentrating on the opening ceremony on the 23rd of July this year. So we are not speculating of whether the games are taking place. We are working on how the games will take place.
Mr. Bach said the complexity of the games had multiplied in the pandemic and announced a playbook of measures, including social distancing and potential quarantines, intended to host them safely. But Bach, who in November said he was very, very confident of holding the Olympics in front of fans, conceded that they could now take place behind closed doors. Doubts have soared about the games due to start in less than 6 months, as the pandemic continues to paralyze many countries and with large parts of Japan, including Tokyo, under a state of emergency. On Thursday, Tokyo's first Olympic event this year, an artistic swimming competition scheduled for March, was postponed for 2 months because of travel restrictions. Asked about vaccination programs, Bach said the IOC is not in favor of athletes jumping the queue, noting the elderly and healthcare workers must be the first in line. He noted that the IOC has asked every National Olympic Committee to get in touch with their respective government about access to vaccination. Bach said the playbook was a huge undertaking under daily review and covered essential issues such as immigration, transport, and living in the Olympic Village. And the former Olympic fencer warned that talk about canceling the games was damaging for athletes who are trying to prepare themselves physically and mentally. CJ?
Well, Dennis, with the other games happening around the world now, we have the NBA, we have tennis, and, I'm sure they can find a way to make the games happen there in Japan. We have examples already. Well, thank you so much, Dennis, for your update. Please do stay safe out there and keep us posted more about this story.
You too, CJ. Thank you very much for reporting live from Tokyo, Japan. This is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
And the World Health Organization's European branch said it is too early to ease virus restrictions in Europe, despite a drop in new cases in most countries. Hans Klug, the WHO's regional director for Europe, said 30 of the WHO European region's 53 countries had, quote, seen a significant decrease in 14-day cumulative incidents. Let's listen in.
Today, we face a pandemic paradox. Vaccines, on the one hand, offer remarkable hope. On the other hand, newly emerging variants of concern are presenting greater uncertainty and risk. Continued high rates of transmission and emerging COVID-19 variants of concern, however, have raised the urgency of the task to vaccinate priority groups. The increasing expectation of science and vaccine development, production and equitable distribution is not being met as fast as we would all like. As of today, 33 European countries have reported cases of the variant initially identified in the United Kingdom, while 16 have reported the one first identified in South Africa. Several hospitals, schools and long-term care settings have reported outbreaks involving new variants of concern. Lockdowns introduced to limit the spread of the virus, particularly the more transmissible new variants, have resulted in a decrease in new cases across the region.
Days away from the one-year anniversary of the first confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Europe, Mr. Klu said breaking transmission chains is a clear priority. However, he also stressed that the impact on mental health was now so severe that poor mental health had become a parallel pandemic. Citing figures from the International Labour Organization, Klu said half of people between 18 and 29, as well as 20% of healthcare workers, were also suffering from anxiety and depression. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the commemoration of the 76th anniversary of the liberation of the German Nazi extermination camp Auschwitz-Birkenau is held virtually. Take a look.
I appeal to you, you, the people, so many generations after the event, do not let us down. Do not allow the memory to be distorted and poisoned by the ugly resurgence of xenophobia and antisemitism.
To bezprecedensowa sytuacja, gdy światowa pandemia koronawirusa uniemożliwia nam bezpośrednie spotkanie. Ale jest to też ważny znak, który przypomina, że zawsze, bez względu na okoliczności, musimy wypełniać powinność świadków pamięci i strażników prawdy o Holokauście.
Business. Germany has officially marked Holocaust Remembrance Day every January 27 since 1996 with commemorations across the country. Of the 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust, more than 1 million were murdered at Auschwitz, most in its notorious gas chambers, along with tens of thousands of others, including Roma and Soviet prisoners of war. This year's anniversary is marked by growing concerns about extremist violence and incitement in Germany. Chancellor Angela Merkel has spoken of her shame over rising anti-Semitism as the Jewish community has warned that coronavirus conspiracy theories are also being used to stir hatred. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Kanriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
This portion is brought to you by Kubert, an expert in air conditioning and electromechanical, also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Kubert, your ultimate MAPS air conditioning solutions.
Welcome back to the news. The Philippine economy shrank a record 9.5% in 2020, but is expected to stage a strong recovery before the end of the year with the rollout of vaccines against COVID-19. The Philippine Statistics Office, or PSA, on Thursday reported the gross domestic product posted a smaller contraction of 8.3% in the fourth quarter of last year. The prospects for 2021 are encouraging, with a continuous calibrated reopening of businesses and mass transportation and the relaxation of age group restrictions. We will see more economic activity in the months ahead, said Acting Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua, reading a prepared joint statement of the government's economic managers in a virtual press conference. Chua said the Duterte administration's efforts to increasingly open the economy while fast-tracking the vaccination program and keeping the COVID-19 caseload to the lowest level possible would boost business and consumer confidence that are crucial to a robust economic recovery. Meanwhile, shares in Hong Kong's marquee carrier Cathay Pacific plunged on Thursday after the struggling airline unveiled a 6.7 billion Hong Kong dollar bond sale to try to stem its rampant cash burn. The firm's stock tumbled 9.7% as the market closed in Hong Kong days after it warned new quarantine measures planned for passenger and cargo crew arriving in Hong Kong would further dent its finances. Cathay Pacific on Thursday said it would offer 5-year bonds maturing in February 2026 that could also be converted into shares at a 30% premium above the previous day's close. Like all major airlines, Cathay Pacific has seen its business evaporate during the coronavirus pandemic, but the Hong Kong carrier is especially vulnerable because it has no domestic market to fall back on.
Meanwhile, Apple and Facebook delivered stunning gains in profits and revenues over the past quarter in the latest sign that big tech is delivering for pandemic-hit consumers around the world. Blowout quarterly updates from the two Silicon Valley giants highlighted how consumers relied on social media, digital services, and gadgetry as they hunkered down for the global health crisis. Facebook chief executive Mark Zuckerberg said in a call to investors, Apple was becoming one of his company's biggest competitors with its rival smartphone messaging service and tight grip on the App Store, the sole gateway onto iPhones. Apple said profit in the holiday period rose 29% from a year ago to $28.7 billion, while revenues grew 21% to $111.4 billion, with international sales accounting for nearly 2/3 of sales.
Singapore this week launched a 3-month trial of autonomous buses that passengers have to pay to use in a step toward its ambitions to create a network of driverless public transport. Watch this.
I felt a bit, it was unnatural to see like the bus driver not driving. But I mean, I've heard of these kind of technologies. I've seen them before. So I think, yeah, I believe this is quite innovative thing, and yeah, it's definitely the way forward. Yeah, for sure. Honestly, it felt like just any other bus. Yeah, it wasn't as if it was jerky or the bus wasn't driving very fast. turn the corners very smoothly. Yeah, just another bus ride.
I think it's great. I think it's a great experiment. Yeah, and I'm curious. Yeah, that's it.
Bus ride in off-peak hours for 0.20 Singapore dollars through an app. The shuttle takes them between a subway station and stops around Singapore Science Park, a high-tech business hub. The autonomous buses deployed in the trial were developed by ST Engineering, while the mapping program used to guide the vehicles was built by GPS Lands. Public transport companies SBS Transit and SMRT will operate the service routes in Jurong Island and Science Park 2, respectively. The Alliance for Action on Robotics said in a statement Monday that the pilot was expected to end April 30 and it would assess the findings before deciding on the next steps. Autonomous vehicle pilots have been running on Singapore roads since 2015 and included a 2019 public trial on Sentosa, which was jointly conducted by ST Engineering and the Ministry of Transport and Sentosa Development. This 3-month pilot run without incidents and served some 6,000 passengers, according to a report from ZNet. We have more stories for you. Please don't go away.
Happy Beats! Ako po si Elaine Duran at abangan niyo po ako sa bumibirit na jamming sa Jano Gives Entertainment this Friday at 12 noon. Dito lang yan sa Happy Time on Net 25. See you! Happy time, happy time, happy.
Ang ibig sabihin, dumami ang basura sa ating barangay.
Aha! Bakit ang daming basura?
Kayo pala nagtatapon ng mga basura, ha?
Di ba ang pinariringgan mo? Sandali. Okay.
May solusyon na ang problema natin sa basura.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Ikaw ay akin. Sa mundong waring walang puwang para sa kanilang pagmamahalan, sapat pa ang tibok ng kanilang mga puso upang bumuo ng daigdig nilang sarili. Inihahandog ng Eagle Broadcasting Corporation ang kauna-unahang romantic teleserye ng Net25. Ang Daigdig Ko'y Ikaw. Tuwing Sabado, 8:08 ng gabi, dito lamang sa Net25.
At ako'y laging sa'yo hanggang magpakailanman.
One year has passed since the death of 5-time NBA champion Kobe Bryant, along with his daughter Gigi, and 7 others in a helicopter crash outside LA. Many people, like Jimmy Gray from American Samoa, still remember to this day where they were when they heard the tragic news. For more, here's Felchi Ogayon from our American Samoa Bureau.
When I first heard that Kobe Bryant died, I was heartbroken. I was even more heartbroken when I found out that it was that his daughter was with him.
Jimmy Gray from American Samoa is just like any NBA fan, but because he and the Black Mamba are close in age, Jimmy's admiration for the NBA legend goes all the way back into the 1990s.
Kobe Bryant was a big part of my life. He is 4 years younger than I am, so I got a chance to watch Kobe grow up from the time that he arrived in the NBA when he was straight out of high school. He was such a hard worker. He would do extra workouts more than his teammates. And I love his work ethics. I love watching him play. I tried to copy his style, which I didn't get close, but he will always forever be in my heart. I just thought it was fake news at first. I couldn't believe it. My mother told me right after church that Kobe Bryant died, and I told my mom, wow, there's no way. There's no way. He's a legend. And legends don't die. I've been spending the past couple of days just constantly watching YouTube of his old games, of all of the charities that he donated to, all of the good things that he's done in life, from videos of him coaching his daughter after retirement. And again, the transition from him as an NBA star retiring to an NBA legend, his post life after the NBA, it's even more touching than when he was actually playing in the NBA.
Jimmy was very surprised but impressed to realize the impact Kobe Bryant had on people even outside the basketball community.
But I've seen tennis players showing respect and condolences. I've seen soccer players, the whole NBA across the world. I mean, people from talk show hosts, people that have never met him personally were touched by things that he's done.
Finally, Jimmy provides a simple advice that he believes many people nowadays still take for granted.
Now they know to hug and say I love you every day. And it took a legend to remind everybody that life is too short, life is precious. Don't take life for granted. Say I love you every day to the people that mean so much to you.
Reporting from Bach in American Samoa, this is Felcio Kayan, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
In other sports news, Tobias Harris drove in the final dagger as the Philadelphia 76ers thwarted a late Los Angeles rally to hand the reigning NBA champions their first road defeat of the season with 107-106. In a bruising heavyweight clash, of the Eastern Conference leading Sixers made a statement against the league-leading Lakers. Joel Embiid scored 28 points. Ben Simmons notched a triple-double of 17 points, 11 rebounds and 10 assists, and Harris, fed by Seth Curry, sealed the victory with a pull-up jump shot with 3 seconds remaining. The Lakers, who had won a franchise-best 10 road games to start the season, nearly kept the streak alive despite trailing by 14 points in the fourth quarter. The Lakers, down by 12 with 3 minutes and 7 seconds remaining, produced a 13-0 scoring run launched by Alex Caruso's finger roll layup. After three-pointers from Caruso, Dennis Schroeder and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Anthony Davis gave the Lakers a 106-105 lead on a layup setup by LeBron James. Cameroonian center Embiid got an injury scare in the third quarter when he came down hard on the small of his back after he was pushed by James as he rose for a dunk. James was assessed a flagrant foul, and Embiid, who missed the 76ers' previous game with back tightness, gingerly tested himself after he rose but stayed in the game.
And finally in our news, make way for sheep. Traffic stopped as hundreds of freshly shorn sheep are herded along a road in New Zealand's North Island. Take a look.
That's a lot of sheep.
Yeah, and you said a lot of lamb chops.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. See you again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live in interesting times.